So I'm so excited. I'm here today with my friend Michael Klinkner. When did we meet? So long ago.
Oh my gosh, that's a
At
good
least
question.
4 or 5
This is
years
like
ago.
5 years ago for sure.
Well, I vividly remember we met on the day that COVID started and the whole world shut down, and you were on your way to Hawaii.
Oh yeah, so that's
Yeah.
2020.
Yeah, so March 5th, 2020.
Huh, so
So
that's not nearly as long. I barely know you.
So I started following you and then inviting you to speak with me,
Mhm.
and then inviting you to speak in all sorts of different school districts. So I'm super excited to have you here today.
I'm excited
This
to
is
be
my
here.
first Zoom that's like this, so it's super exciting.
You're welcome.
So Madison School District has
Yes.
asked us to speak about, asked you actually, to speak about anxiety
Mhm.
and depression and why we're seeing such an increase. And then I'd love to dive a little bit deeper into what causes it and what we can do about it.
Got it.
Okay, so let's start with why are we seeing such an increase even in elementary school age kids? Because Madison's a K-8 district.
Sure. So one of the big factors is obviously COVID. And so we know that those factors continue to affect kids those age. And so a lot of it has to do with like during the shutdown, especially for the kids are fourth grade and above, where they had those COVID year and a half, where lots of school systems shut down. Kids were back and forth between, I'm at school some days, but not school at others. Out of nowhere, if somebody tests positive around me, I have to go home for a week. And so it was so much back and forth, and their learning really got impaired. And so as a result, lots of kids have felt behind. And so when you add that into all the other stressors of, especially for younger kids, the idea generally was the air outside is dangerous, which is inescapable. And therefore it has to create anxiety based on that. There isn't any way around it. And there's only so many things you can do to protect yourself. And it may affect you or any of the people you love around you. Okay, that's a tough message to send to kids. And so they're going to internalize that, they're going to get scared. And so even if parents did a great job messaging to their kids about like, okay, here's the things to be worried about, here not, inherently it's a scary thing. And then you watched your world school get really, really different because of it. And if anybody lost a job or things shut down or someone they know died from those things, super scary. We know that has an effect. We're still measuring what those effects are, but we know for sure there's an increased spike in anxiety and depression since that time. So is it probably causation? Probably. There's definitely correlation though. Social media also big influence. And so for us parents that are trying to help our kids negotiate social media influences, and so even through K-8, those kids are usually have lots of different types of social media. And if they don't, one of their friends probably does. And what that looks like and the effects of Instagram and Snapchat and TikTok and even Be Real, as far as kids trying to negotiate those things, trying to fit in, trying to get likes and trying not to get criticized, hard.
Hot mess.
Yep, absolutely. Especially when there's some bullying that happens, which is a bit inevitable because that level of bullying is hard for lots of us parents to comprehend because it is, when we think of bullying, we think like playground or at recess or like something like that.
Yeah.
The social media version is the equivalent of if there were a school assembly, they put you up on stage and then somebody shoved you to the ground there for everyone to see and laugh at you and comment on. That's what it would be like now.
Yeah.
Huge, big, giant deal.
Yeah.
Another factor, especially here in our areas, is there's a ton of pressure on kids for academic performance. Even through K-8, I see it all the time, where it's the idea that you better get straight A's, you better achieve, and sometimes even like a 92 isn't good enough. Why is it so low? And lots of kids will even describe.
So where is that? Like that is coming from parent pressure. Sometimes at the secondary level, it's peers. Like, what'd you get on the SAT? What rank are you?
Yep.
So when did we lose our minds? Like when did this academic, I saw it in the schools like 20 years ago when the College Board came down, said everybody has to take the SAT. When did it start showing up in your office?
Not so long after that. And so, and what is especially exacerbated it, and this is going to drive parents crazy, is the portals where you can constantly check on your kids' grades and what they're missing. And if something isn't in and what you got on the test, our parents didn't have all that information. You got grades at the quarter, maybe, but definitely at the semesters, and they came through the mail, so you could steal them and change the grades on them, right? The kids have there's no cushion between like, okay, I didn't do great on this quiz, but I got this, it's fine. Or like, I didn't turn in that homework assignment, but I got it, it's okay. They're not allowed to have autonomy and independence in regard to their day in and day out classes. And so then when you add in, hold on, I missed something, or I didn't miss something, but my teacher didn't add it in, which happens, of course, because teachers are way too stressed, they're way too underpaid, they have too much going on. It is unreasonable that they're going to be caught up on everything all the time, let alone if there's a redo or an assignment late, it's not going in on time. And your teacher's doing the best they can. But the kid knows when I get home, I'm going to hear it. And so then.
Or when they're
Mhm.
at school, because we have parents texting like, I just got your
valid
grades.
point,
So
absolutely.
in our district, it comes out on Fridays at 1 p.m.
Mhm.
So today, in like a half hour, I'm gonna get a download of any missing assignments. Which, you know, the propensity of a parent is like, what's
What the
going
heck
on?
are you doing? Why did you miss
Yeah,
that thing?
so they're in the
Absolutely.
middle of class and we're blowing them up, and or they get in the car and we're like, what's that?
Where's that thing? Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
We've lost our minds.
I don't want to say that necessarily, but
It's okay, I'll say it for you.
I can say we're putting way too much pressure on the kids about those things. And so school doesn't even exist by itself anymore. And so like, generally speaking, if things were going badly at school, your teacher was in charge of those things, home was home, school was school. That blurred line now too has a lot to do with why kids are so much more anxious, because there's no reprieve, no matter where they are, no matter what they have going on. They now have all the social pressures, they have the social media pressures, they have the grade pressures, and let alone any drama or anything they're having to negotiate or deal with, including drugs and alcohol, even in the K-8.
So would you say then that there's parental anxiety, like the grade portal was built as a communication tool, not as like gotcha?
Yep.
So would you say parental anxiety is like they're getting the grade portal report and then they're displacing that on the kids?
Yeah, absolutely. Because then, well, as parents, lots of times too, what we'll do is our kids' performance implicates us as parents. And so it's like, oh my gosh, if you're messing up and your friends know that you're messing up, which means their parents know that we're messing up, what are they going to think about me? Which is just so unfair to your kid, and they're going to feel that pressure.
Yeah. So let's talk about anxiety itself and then depression itself. Like, how does that manifest? Like, you know, I get calls and then I refer them to you about, you know, I think one thing that I didn't know was like avoidance is sometimes anxiety. Sometimes when you have two kids going back and forth, one's anxious, the other one's trying to help them out as a classmate or a friend, then this kid starts getting anxious because they're like trying to help each other. So anxiety in general, how does it show up in K-8 kids, K-12 kids?
Yeah. So any of these things I'm about to describe in and of themselves, any single one of them doesn't necessarily mean anything. And if it's happening for like a short period of time, like a week or two, doesn't mean anything. We're going to take it in context and we're going to look for longer stretches of time, months. And over any of these things, it'll get worse over the months. And so school refusal is a good one for both anxiety and depression, where your child who would previously be pretty willing to go to school as much as anybody's willing at 6 a.m. to get out there and get going, right? Then they would have gone before, now they're not, or it's a big deal, or they want to go late or something like that. And so what we're going to see, that level of school refusal that was never present before, now is going to start showing up. We're going to see irritability. We're going to see social withdrawal. We're going to see tends to be like changes in appetite or changes in sleep, those sort of things. Also, again, we're going to talk about grades here a little bit, but as grades decline for a child who wasn't doing that at all before, and it's not necessarily a comprehension issue. Like they're trying, but they just don't get it. They're not trying anymore. They're not doing their homework. They're not turning things in. And then sometimes even they're doing their homework, but they're not turning it in. That happens too, because they're afraid they're going to mess up, or like, I did it, I'm afraid I'm going to hear about it, so I'm just going to completely avoid the behavior. Also nightmares, things in the middle of the night, less contact with their peers. Also the idea of things that I previously enjoyed, I don't want any part of anymore. And that could be clubs, that could be sports, that could even be video games, like any of those things they're just going to pull away from. This is hard because, again, we're as we're drifting towards, like middle school ages, 6th, 7th, 8th grade, kids are just kind of different. We've got puberty coming in. They're going to be different than how they were before. So be it, we got it, tough times. And so they're going to change patterns. They're going to change how they interact with the world overall, how they interact with school overall, how they interact with their parents overall. Awesome. That is supposed to happen during that time. And so they're also like more irritable. They're also a little bit more like independent, or even a little bit more rebellious. Okay, within some amount of reason. But they're irritable all the time, or nothing is ever okay. Or anytime you ask them to do anything, it's not like but they do it anyway. It's I'm not going to do this. Good luck trying to make me try. Any of those signs, again, for extended months period of time and increasing in frequency and intensity, that's going to let you know your kid has some underlying stuff that needs to be dealt with.
So what do we typically do as parents that exacerbates that? So the avoidance, the isolation, I think the tendency that I hear from parents is like, compliance and obedience. Like, you have to do this. You have to, right? So you have a kid who has school refusal or just isn't performing in class. Like, what's a better approach than demand to help lessen the anxiety?
Well, the first mistakes we make are trying to figure out the perfect consequence that's going to motivate your kid to then do the thing that you want them to do. The consequences for these ages of kids are the second most preferential thing to do. They're going to be much more reward driven than consequence adverse. And so they'll do things to get something. It is less likely that they'll do something or stop doing something because they're afraid of what the punishment's going to be. Their brains just aren't good for that kind of stuff. They just don't think that way. The consequences don't matter as much, those sort of things. So the first mistake is trying to figure out the consequence. Like, I'm going to take your phone until ... And sometimes that's appropriate, but the other thing that tends to happen a lot too is parents will come in angry, they'll come in demanding, it's going to be like, get your crap together. And so then the kid feels pressure of like, oh, it's not okay to not be okay. What we can do instead is get curious. Just ask the kid, like, hey, I've noticed that your homework's getting turned in less frequently. It also seems like you're kind of in your room more, and also seems like around here, you're kind of just not around as much, and it's hard to get you to do anything. Kiddo, it's all okay. What's going on? And what's behind all this? Because it's not like you. I've known you for years now. You've never shown up this way before. I'm a little bit worried. And then just listen. And if they're not willing to talk at that point, that's okay. It's been an open door. They know that you care. And when they're ready to talk, you've set the groundwork. They can talk if and when they're ready. The other thing to do is whenever you notice that they've got something going on, so depression especially, kids will come up and just say, I'm just really sad, I'm really down, I'm unmotivated. And parents will have the response of, okay, just get over it. Or it's just a phase. Or like, what's your problem? Like, what do you have to be sad about? Okay, got it. Some of those things are all really valid. What you can do for your kid, whether it's about the anxiety or depression, your kid is actually experiencing what they're experiencing. They're feeling what they're feeling. You may not understand it. You may not agree with it. You may not get why they're crying in their bed because they only got 27 likes, or they got 127 likes, but like this one person didn't like their things.
Right.
What's the big deal? Okay, I'm not going to get that. I totally understand, but they are experiencing it. Just validate your kids' emotions. Got it. I hear that you're really upset about the fact you didn't get enough likes on that post, or that somebody made a mean comment. Those sort of things. I got it, kiddo. I get what you're going through. Big deal. Your kid wants to feel heard and understood. When you take the time to validate that emotion, that goes a long, long way to your kid being willing to talk to you about other things, because you may not get it, but you're communicating to them that like, you're valuable, your emotions are valid. Let's get through it together. The other thing a parent can help their kid do is then, okay, so we have this thing going on. How do we solve the problem? What do we do? What are your thoughts on that? Younger kids, you may want to give them some options. Like, do you want to do it this way? Do you want to change what time we're doing our homework? Do you want to come home and grab a snack and then we can do our homework? Whatever those things are. And give them some options and let the kid choose. Or older kids, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th grade, let them problem solve for themselves. And if they can't, give them some options. But if they can, and it's a less than perfect answer, when their idea is like, well, I'm just going to wait to do my homework till 7:30 at night. And as a parent, you're like, it's a bad idea. It's a bad idea. I know what you're like at 7:30 and this won't go well. It's okay. Let them try. And if they're able to pull it off because it's their idea, which might happen, even it's not a good idea, but it's theirs. And so they'll figure out a way to make it work. Cool. If it doesn't work, you can hold on. What's not working about this? What do we need to adjust? What do we need to do differently? And so then it's also teaching your kid to have some ownership for their own problems and then how to solve those things too, instead of just getting overwhelmed by them and not really doing anything. Last thing a parent can really do is if a kid is really struggling and they're having a hard time, it's okay to seek professional help. If no matter what you do, no matter how hard you try, the anxiety continues to get worse or the depression continues to get worse. Sometimes a parent just can't solve anything. You can even link them up to, the school counselor, school social worker in the Madison School District, or you can reach out to local providers that can help maybe just like piece together a few skills, get through a tough time, and then you don't need it anymore and get out of your life.
And you are opening a new practice over there, right? Or it's already open?
Already open. We are in the right up by the Biltmore Fashion Mall, right up on Camelback Road.
Perfect. So not too far. So local resource in the Madison area. So couple other topics: self-esteem, grit, and resilience.
Yep.
So when a child is struggling with overcoming a hurdle, maybe best friend departed from them in 5th grade.
Sure.
And, our response is like, well, go find some new friends. And you're like, I'm in 5th grade. Everybody's known each other since pre-K. We've been together for 6 years. Like there's only so many kids to choose from. So typical response, maybe a little dismissive. How can we flip the script on that?
Again, that as a parent, approach it curiously, ask some questions about what's it like? What have you noticed? Since you lost your best friend, what's lunchtime like? Or who do you hang out with afterwards? Or what's it been like not having them in class to be able to talk to? Ask about their experience and then just validate their experience. Because it stinks. Losing your best friend in 5th grade because they moved somewhere would be honestly really very hard. And they're not just easily replaceable. And if they were, then they're not really your best friend to begin with. And so there's going to be some grief associated with it, any of those things. So as you're noticing that's what's coming up for your kid and they're struggling that way, you're just going to ask a lot of questions. And then for them, whatever they're describing, you're going to do the active listening. Okay, so here's what I just heard you saying, because they're not there anymore. You don't have anyone to sit with at lunch, which makes you just dread school because you feel like you're standing out. Got it, kiddo. That would be hard. So
there was a movement a couple years ago, on grit and resilience and growth mindset, all of that. So I love all that stuff and it sounds great, on paper, right? But I have 4 children. So I'm always looking for ways to sort of, push, but not push too hard, some good one-liners. Sometimes their self-talk is a little negative and they go down a rabbit hole pretty quickly, especially because they're all going through puberty at the same time. So how can we help them? I think there's this notion that resiliency is something you get overnight.
Yeah.
And from what I understand, it sort of grows over time.
So grit and resiliency are directly tied to self-esteem. And it's not if you have high self-esteem, you'll therefore have grit. It's the other way around. If you have grit, you will therefore have higher self-esteem.
Oh, see?
And so grit is that idea that when things are hard, I will try hard anyway. And so even when something seems daunting or a little overwhelming or unfamiliar, okay, I got it. You strap your backpack on and you keep going. That comes very solely from failing. And so the idea that I fell off the monkey bars, pick myself up, brush myself off, get back on the monkey bars. Or I'm trying algebra and I'm not very good at it, but I'm going to keep trying anyway. And so I emphasize constantly for parents, effort over outcome. Not every kid is going to be good at every subject. In fact, even the most brilliant kids they may be brilliant at math, and they do not do English.
Yeah.
Or they may be amazing at science, they do not do social studies. Okay, that's just their brain. It's just the way it is. That's totally fine. All I'm going to ever care about is, did you try hard? And what was your attitude like while trying hard? And so if you are giving your absolute best effort and you are scraping together a C+, because that's all you got, I am so much prouder of you because of how hard you tried. You scraped and clawed that C+ versus an easy A because it comes to you easily. You don't have to try very hard. What did you learn from there? I mean, you learned the math, but what is that helping to shape you as a person? No, it's coming easily. And so when a kid is trying and they have a reasonable attitude, all those things, jump up and down, reward the heck out of that, praise the heck out of those kids. That's a lot of, I know what you're studying for right now. I know it's really hard for you. I'm so proud of you that you've been sitting here for the last 45 minutes, just practicing your math for that midterm tomorrow. That eventually, and so whatever grade they get, hey kiddo, you've tried so hard for that stuff. I'm so proud of what you put into this test. Great job, actually. And so let's, grab some Chick-fil-A on the way home.
Oh, Chick-fil-A, I love that.
Absolutely.
So these two statements, I learned this yesterday from Ned Johnson. So
Yeah.
Ned Johnson is one of my favorite authors, and he wrote The Self-Driven Child.
Mhm.
And he also wrote a book called What Do You Say? Fantastic, both of them. So I was talking to him yesterday about my oldest, who's super, super struggling in Algebra 2.
Okay.
So she's taking it for the second time.
Okay.
So she texted me from school and
It's
was
an
like,
Algebra 2.
Algebra 2 too. She texted me from school and was like, I think I passed the exam. Like we're struggling. We're on the struggle bus. So I was texting back and forth with her and I said, all you can ask for, you did your best, right? So I sent the text to Ned and he sent back and was like, that was really sweet. That conversation you had back and forth. He's like, just a suggestion going forward. When we tell kids like you did your best, like, that's great, but maybe a better one-liner would be like, look at all the effort you put in.
Yep.
So I love that you validated and echoed his, and I love that because you can do your best and still not get the, product or outcome that you're looking for. But if we sort of teach them that effort matters, I think that's the way to go.
Sure. There's a thing called positive label praise, which is whenever you catch your kid doing something right, no matter how small it is, you take a moment to praise specifically what that thing is. And so like your example would have been, I'm so proud of you. You put in so much time and effort into that class and into that midterm. Amazing. I'm so happy for you.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. And so like you're praising the effort.
Right.
Outcome is a side effect of effort. And so like you don't have to attend to the side effect. You're just on top of and then praising as specifically as possible what you're seeing that they're doing right.
Got it. So last loaded question.
Oh.
So grades. We know that grades are only one metric of success.
Mm-hmm.
So if you are a family that believes like, all A's is the only way,
Mm-hmm.
and you have a kid that maybe is not equipped to get all A's, how can we work on sort of that framework?
Katie, how dare you suggest that not every kid can get straight A's
I know.
in everything?
I
That
was
is
one of
ridiculous.
them. I did not get all A's. I didn't. I did
me neither.
fairly well, but I really, really stunk at math.
That's okay.
Yeah.
I'm
But
sure.
I think like the parenting culture in
Oh my gosh, absolutely.
most areas around here, and I'm going to name Madison because I know them well and I know their parent community and I know our parent community here. Like there's so much pressure about grades.
Yes.
And then we're posting about it on social media, like so-and-so is in National Honor Society, so-and-so has a 4.5, like, and I get like wanting to celebrate your child. I'm all for that.
Yep.
But how do we maybe step back a little bit?
Well, if your kid has a 4.5 GPA, of course, praise them for that. It's a positive outcome from positive effort. That part's good. So yeah, it just had this. It was like Tuesday. I had this conversation with a parent who did that same thing where they were like, there was this post about their kid was in National Honor Society and how great their grades are, and it rubbed some people the wrong way. And I said to her, what would it be like for you to post pictures of your kids studying versus the outcomes and achievements? Like, look what a hard worker my kid is, and like, look how hard they're trying all the time. What effect do you think that would have on what you're trying to create, or like about like why you're so proud of your kid? That was a good eye opener for her. It's not necessarily about those grades at the end. It's like, I'm actually proud of my kid because of the grind and what they put in all the time that then has resulted in those things.
Yeah.
I think for us, that's when we can get in touch with day after day after day how hard they're trying. That's the biggest part. And like just praise those efforts in the day in and day out. And like whatever grades happen. I get that lots of parents were very high achieving and went to an Ivy League school or like some really great school. And that's great. Absolutely. And if that's where your kid can get to, fantastic. But if they can't, so be it. And that doesn't mean excuse making if they're not doing their homework and they're not turning in their homework and there's not some underlying mental health condition that we talked about. Okay, let's walk through that because that is your best efforts. Like what is happening there?
Yeah.
Lots of times it's going to be there's too much pressure from the parents. And so they just kind of back away because no matter what they do, no matter how hard they try, it is never good enough.
Mm.
And that's the biggest factor. And that's the biggest thing that gets created from that ever present. You better do good, you better do good, you better do good. Because even if, so those are the parents that will like scroll through on the parent portal about what's up with that C? And that kid's gonna be like, you just scrolled past 5 A's. Like you're giving me that little bit.
Yeah.
No, it's much more about, oh my gosh, look at all of these classes. Love it. I'm so proud of you. Are you worried at all about science that you have a C in? Or is there anything going on in there we need to discuss or talk about? And just approach it that way. Again, if you just get really curious and validate and help them problem solve, you're doing the right thing versus I'm going to scare you into making sure you're trying harder to get an A. Eventually what happens there is rebellion, because if I can never do good enough by you, no matter how hard I try, I'm going to stop trying.
Yeah. So I was laughing as you were talking because my other daughter had missed a sketch of ice cream.
Okay.
So I was scrolling through the portal and she was sick. And then when she came back, she forgot to see her art teacher about the ice cream.
Okay.
So I screenshot it and was like, can we draw some ice cream? So I was very curious, like, can we draw some ice cream? Right. But no, I was that person that you're talking about. I'm like, what is going on here? Yeah. See?
Which is probably what was much more true is your kid also got the same alert, knew that it was missing, and already had plans to draw some ice cream later that day.
Yeah, we do the ice cream. So we're good on ice cream drawing.
Good job.
I'm like, what's going on here? So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Super, super appreciate it. Thank you, Madison, for having us. We hope to see you soon, maybe in person.
Oh
We
my
haven't
gosh.
been back there in person in a while.
Probably should take care of that.
Yeah, yeah. We'll see you soon.